Hey there, I'm Bailey and welcome to my channel where we discuss all the tips and tricks necessary for you to live a life of adventure. Today I want to discuss my gear list from 2020 for backpacking with my dog. So this is going to be dog specific. I'm not going to go deep into the gear that I carried for me specifically, although some of it does cross over. And I just wanted to share because a lot of this has worked really well for me. This is all gear that I used while through hiking the 750-mile San Luis Loop over the summer, self-supported. And a lot of it I'm going to be using going forward. I will discuss some gear that I'm probably going to switch out, and soon I will be making likely a 2021 gear video, especially as summer draws closer. But I thought it'd be nice to kind of reflect on what worked well for me, so that way maybe you can get some ideas of gear that you would like to carry. But before I dive in, I do want to say that if you are interested in seeing more videos all about backpacking and hiking, specifically with dogs, be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I'd also appreciate a thumbs up if you don't mind. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start first of all with the big three. So, you know, when we talk about people backpacking, that would be your backpack, your tent, and your sleep system. So sleep pad, sleeping bag. So I do have a backpack for Prima. You know, she's my German Shepherd. I don't have a pack for Skittles because she only weighs about 11 pounds on average. And so really she could only carry about 1 to 2 pounds, which would probably be the weight of her pack. So it's just not worth it to me. And honestly, it's nice to have Prima carry her backpack when we are day hiking to carry her poop, and then sometimes on shorter trips. But I've just found that having her carry a pack at all on a long distance hike really doesn't work well for her. I mean, she could probably maybe do without any weight, but especially where we hike where it's pretty hot and arid, she just does much better not carrying anything. You know, through hiking is hard enough, especially, or like long trips are hard enough. So I don't mind carrying her stuff, and I ended up, you'll see, carrying her pack on the back of my pack for most of the rest of our trip. So, which worked out nice because I could keep her poop and stuff in there. But the pack I did use was the Groundbird Gear Roll Top Trekking Pack. Now I got this in 2018 when they were a little bit cheaper than they are now. And I had the ability to order custom colors without it being extra. Now, of course, you know, they're a bit more expensive because they become more popular and stuff. And your color choices are a bit more limited, I believe, although don't quote me on that. The nice thing is there's still a custom bag. So the harness detaches from the roll top pack. So you'll see on here, there's like a top, and I do like this, and I will, I think, continue to carry this harness going into 2021 because it was really nice for big stream crosses. You know, when I hiked the San Luis Loop, we started the beginning of June in the San Juans when there was a lot of snowpack melting at the time, and we did have some pretty decent fords, and so it was really nice to be able to put the harness on Prima and use that just to make some of our crossings a lot safer. So I will, I think, continue to carry that on long distance trips. The pack, I'm not sure yet, but it is nice. It has a nice roll top, which I like. It's a sleeker design than the Palisades, although at some point I am going to pick up a Palisades pack and do a comparison between the two. It's pretty beat up, but we've also taken it a lot of really not nice places at all. So, you know, take it how you will. It's pretty dirty, but the nice thing is there's like Velcro, and I have silencers on. You can put quite a bit in here and adjust the sizing, which I like, is what I like about these roll top packs, is you can adjust the sizing. So that's just what I used for her backpack, even though she didn't even carry it all that much. I really don't think having a dog carrying a backpack is necessary, especially if it's not something that your dog is suited to. You know, if a dog really likes it, that's great. I don't think it's something you should force your dog to do necessarily. Okay, so that takes me to the next item on my big three list, which would be our shelter or a tent. So I do use a tent currently, rather than like a tarp or a hammock or something like that. I use the Big Agnes Tiger Wall UL2, and I have been super happy with it. So I just use the tent. I don't use the footprint currently because I haven't been able to find one, and I've been honestly too lazy to make my own. So, and that's worked fine. I've had a couple issues with it, but personally it's all been like a user error. It hasn't been the tent, it's all been me. I got it at a garage sale for like 120 bucks, which is a really good steal because it weighs about 2 pounds. It's like 2 pounds and 3 ounces is the trail weight they list on their website. And it's just been great because there's so much extra room in that tent, which is really nice when you're backpacking with a dog. because I spend a lot more time in my tent than I would if I was hiking by myself. So it's just nice to be able to spread out. With the 2-person, that's plenty of room for me and my German Shepherd and my Terrier, as well as all my supplies. And so spending a lot of time in there if the weather's bad and I can't open up the doors is really handy. With extra, I usually don't leave things in the vestibules, but it's nice to have 2 vestibules to put stuff in to dry out, that kind of thing, as well as make shade and such. So that's what I use for my tent. I've been happy. I started out with the copper spur 1-person, and it was just too small for me and my dog. So I really recommend that if you have a larger dog, so dog probably over like 40 or 50 pounds, depending on how lanky they are, that I would really add count that as a +1 person. So if there's like 2 people and 1 dog like that, I would really go for like a 3-person tent. And that's just me and my experience that I've gathered over time. Okay, so the third part of our trifecta of our big 3 items would be the sleeping bag / quilt / pad. So I don't use a pad for my dogs currently for 3-season hiking and backpacking. I don't know. I mean, my Terrier's a bit more susceptible to the cold, but she will just sleep in my bag if it's really cold enough. My German Shepherd really is pretty hardy in the cold, so I mean, I feel definitely okay with her sleeping without a pad down to 20 degrees. Well, if it gets a lot colder than that, then it's kind of like not my favorite, but it's usually only for one night if it's going to happen. That's something I might change. You know, I might add maybe like a cut down closed cell foam pad for her or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I currently don't use a pad, and it's been fine thus far. As far as the bag, I use the Costco Black Diamond quilt. So I've been pretty happy with it. They are a little slick. I mean, again, Prima's very hardy. So it's nice because I can lay it down across the floor of my tent to kind of protect it from her nails. That way it's less likely to get a puncture, and just to keep the dirt off and stuff. But if it's pretty chilly or kind of damp, then she'll like lay on it, and then I can wrap the rest of it over her and kind of like cuddle her in. And the nice thing is it's big enough for both my dogs to share. Like I said, it fits across most of my tent. So I've just been very happy with that. I also like how packable it is. I mean, it packs down probably this small or smaller if you put it like in a stuff sack. I don't. I just like shove it around in my backpack. That way it stays dry. And that really has worked out super nicely, and I'm very happy with that. It weighs about 1 pound. So, you know, you can maybe go a little lighter on that, I guess, but it works really well, and I think it serves its function, and it makes life a lot more comfy for my own dogs and then for me as well. So that's the last of my big 3 items. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about food and water, because obviously that's another pretty big aspect of backpacking, is you have to carry all your own food and all your own water, or your dog does. So as far as water goes, I personally carry an extra smart water bottle for my dogs, and the reason why is I can put water in here. If you filter your dog's water, you can filter water in here. So that makes it easy. I personally don't, but you know, it gives you options. And then the nice thing is when I pour it out for my dogs, if they don't drink all their water, I can pour the excess back in, which is super important to me because I hike primarily up till this point in places that are very arid, and water has definitely been a high commodity. So this is really nice to have. I use 3 smart water bottles total, 1 for me, 1 for the dogs, and then it turned out to be a dirty water smart water bottle, but like an extra one for cooking water that's not flavored, essentially. I also usually with my dogs carry like an extra platypus, and I've kind of have done this in the past anyways, but it's just nice to increase your water capacity if you're hiking somewhere that's kind of deserty, which for me is like New Mexico and the lower elevations in Colorado, but maybe if you hike like in California or Arizona or something, I think it's very valuable because it packs down really small and it's pretty lightweight, and you can store a lot of extra water that way. And then for my dogs to drink, I currently just use some collapsible like felt or fabric dog bowls that honestly you can just find these at any probably pet store like Petco or PetSmart, as well as probably like an REI or something like that. Order it online on like Chewy or Amazon or something. I've had these for a long time. They're getting kind of nasty, which is one thing I don't really like. I could probably wash them. I don't really know. I haven't tried, but I have 2 of those. So I have 1 per dog, and the nice thing is I use the same bowls for food and water, so I'm not like double dipping, but I do want 2 separate for food. That way each dog has 1. So it doubles for food and water. So 2 bowls total. I am planning this year to upgrade to 2 new Dyneema dog water bowls just because they're lighter and the fabric they're made out of will make them easier to clean and they shouldn't get as nasty, but I'm gonna give it a shot and I'll let you know. So as soon as I get those, I will, you know, post some sort of gear review or let you know how that goes once we get there. But as far as food, so obviously I also use the bowls for food. I have up to this point just carried regular the same dog food they eat normally, which I actually already feed them a very high calorie dog food. I feed them like a sport dog food, and it's honestly is the one that I've found has the highest number of calories per cup of food on the market, and I've looked at a lot of dog foods. It's nice because it's balanced. I do think in the future I might, going forward for long distance backpacking, do some sort of combination of dog food and dehydrated just to like lighten the load a bit, because it's a lot to carry 5 days worth of kibble for both my dogs on a long distance hike, but I'll make another video about that. So going along with food, I do want to mention a couple other kind of items I use sometimes for backpacking, mostly long distance. So the first is I also give my dogs a glucosamine supplement. There's really not a lot of conclusive research in the veterinary field about the effectiveness of glucosamine, but generally it's considered to be a better preventative than it is to fix problems. So I just give it just because my dogs are doing a lot of hiking and high impact activity in the summer, and I want to make sure that they're able to hike well into their golden years without breaking down and getting arthritis and that kind of thing. I also, this summer, brought these F-bombs. So these are just olive oil. I got them on Amazon, and I would supplement their food with this. My dogs really did not like olive oil by the end of our hike. They just thought it was nasty. I think that starting off with just that helps, but I would focus more on increasing calories than supplementing with olive oil, because I think even though I was kind of forced to do that just because of, you know, COVID and being self-supported on my hike, I had limited options, and also just, you know, testing things out. But I would go more for increased calories and dog food rather than adding olive oil to increase your calories of your dog. But again, I'll talk about dog food separately. The last thing is I added CBD dog treats. I really don't think these made a difference, and my dogs really hated them. They would not eat them. I had to like break them up to get them to eat them. So that, I just want to mention that I did carry that at one point. Two other things that are kind of crossover items, so kind of like the tent where I would carry this anyways, but I want to mention it because I think it's helpful for dogs, is first of all, using odor-proof sacks. So this is an odor-proof sack that you can buy at like REI or online. So basically you put your things that are stinky or smell and might attract bears inside, and then you know, it's less likely for them to smell it. Of course, you have to like be careful with how you handle it and stuff, but I usually bring one for food and for like toiletry items and dog food and whatever, and then I use one as like a dirty op sack where I put in my dog poop, my trash, anything that I'm going to throw in a trash can goes in the other one. And the reason why I say this is because this is great for poop. I generally carry my dog poop out. I don't usually bury it, just because my dogs are not very good about selecting a good spot to poop. So the nice thing about this is it really cuts down on the smell. You know, I've carried 5 days of dog poop or more, and this makes it so you can't smell it at all. And I mean, it's kind of nasty because it's clear, so you can like see the poop bags in there, but I mean, that's the least of your worries if it's buried in your pack, right? So that's just kind of nice to have. And then along with that, the last thing I want to mention about food is I personally use an Ursack, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I would use it anyways for my own food, but for those of you that are convinced that you want to bear hang, which is probably fine depending on where you live, I think this is just a lot easier, especially with a dog. And the reason why is because dog food is not light. And so I have personally in the past had a very difficult time hanging dog food. Finding a place to hang people food in Colorado is a major struggle, let alone dog food. So this just has made my life so much easier. And that's, I mean, I'm probably biased just because there are not very many good trees in Colorado to bear hang. We have so many lodgepole pines with very thin branches close to the tree. So this just makes life a lot easier. And to me, it's worth the wait. It's heavier than using like a Z-Packs bag or something for bear hanging, but To me, it is well worth the wait and has made my life a lot easier. And honestly, I just carried the one that's like the XL, the Versac XL or something like that. But next summer, I think I'll bring both my bear bags because I can just roll it up, just like I showed you, rolled it up, whatever one I'm not using when I run out of food. But then if I have too much food, which happened to me at least twice this summer where I had too much food to fit in here and I ended up having to do a subpar bear hang, I'll have both. So if I have a really big carry, which is liable to happen this summer, then I can have the ability to properly store my food, especially in grizzly country. And I like that too because it's bear resistant for sure. So like grizzlies can't get in there either. So I would highly suggest looking into that if you have not already. So I did mention dog poop, and I will say that one thing I always carry with me is dog poop bags, as well as a trowel. I mean, this is something I carry anyways as part of my backpacking gears, a trowel, which is just kind of a nice backup, but poop bags are super important because sometimes you're not in a place where it's easy to bury. You know, see my video about that, especially if you're like road walking or something, but I just carry lots of poop bags. I put them in my resupplies. They're, you know, not that hard to carry them. So just make sure you take some sort of poop bags with you. And I would say more is better so you don't run out. It's better to have more than less on that front. Okay, so now we're on to kind of some of our other items. I have quite a few here that I'm gonna list. There's a couple that are things I bring on every trip. And the first of those would be collars. So collars with up-to-date tags. And I'm sorry, my dog's probably about to get excited. So if you're doing a really long trip, you could maybe consider having a special tag on it that says what you're doing. That way if your dog gets lost while you're in the backcountry, but any sort of tag that just has your contact info, says they're chipped, maybe having other person's contact info that they can reach if you're in the backcountry might be smart. And then of course leashes are a non-negotiable as well. I personally use these British slip leads. Just, I don't know, I don't think they're any light or anything like that, but they're easier for me, especially because I let my dogs hike off leash. They're easier for me to take on and off, hang on my pack, store, that kind of thing. So I like these British slip leads, and these are the ones I use this summer. But those are something I take on every hike or walk, right, is collars, tags, and leashes. So another thing I take that's part of my 10 essentials that I include for my dogs are first aid items. So in addition to my own first aid and gear repair items, like I carry paracord, which I think is nice in case I have a dog emergency for getting my German Shepherd out, as well as your basic gauze and, you know, like Benadryl is something you can use for dogs and people. So, you know, there's a lot of things in here that help for both. Tweezers is another one, like porcupines, right? Carry tweezers. I do have a special dog foot wrapping kit, or just like medical wrapping kit in general. I used to work in vet clinics for a long time and in the animal care field, so these are all pieces of gear that I know how to use. I would not encourage you to necessarily go buy all these items, you know, unless you know how to use them. And again, this is probably something I'll make a video about, but I carry Elasticon, Zoannis tape, vet wrap, and then some sort of gauze pads. I used to have gauze wrap and then like the casting wrap as well, but I need to buy more of that. So that's just really nice if either of my dogs gets a very serious foot injury, I have the ability to wrap their feet the same way they would at the vet, and then I could use like the bag or booties or whatever to protect it and keep it from getting wet until we get out. If they got a tail injury, I could do the same thing, or like an ear injury. You know, other places you'd have to get a little bit more creative, but I use this a lot because I had a lot of foot problems, mostly with Prima and her dew claws. Oh, and I have mini scissors too to cut, because some of it, like my vet wrap, is not the tearing kind, so yeah. But anyways, Prima had a lot of foot problems, especially with her dew claws this last summer, so I used a lot of that just to try to help her. I mean, it was not successful, and I have a lot of plans on what I'm going to do differently this upcoming year, but I was really glad I had that. And I also use the Zoannis tape a lot, honestly, because Skittles, it's very hard to find booties that fit, and so I would use the tape and like wrap it around just below her like ankle, like just above her bottom pad, and wrap it as tightly as possible, because it was impossible to make it like too tight just with the fabric of the booties, but it would make it harder for the booties to fall off. So I use that a lot, which leads me to the next thing, which is foot care. So I carried these like musher booties for the dogs, 1 per foot, plus maybe an extra if I had any. So these are like Prima size. These are like Skittles size, and this is not what they look like brand new. You can see they wore them so much that the feet, like the bottom, wore off. That's how tough the trails were. And this is like the thickest denier material they make too. So these are like from alaskabooties.com or dogbooties.com, which are actually made in Anchorage, ironically enough. So that's one option. I also ended up buying some dog booties when I was in New Mexico, and those are just more of your like run-of-the-mill pet store dog booties. And those actually work just as well as the dog booties from dogbooties.com. So I don't really know if they make a big difference. Obviously I have a lot that I'm going to change on the footwear front, but I also bought some like little kid socks. And I think that really helped a lot with Prima. So that's something I'll probably consider in the future as well. As far as like foot salves, I use Musher Secret, and I have like the smaller container that I took backpacking, and then I would like restock from the bigger container. You could also use like Bear Balm. So this is like for climbers, kind of like a climber salve type thing, or some sort of thing that's like beeswax based is another option to rub on their feet just to make them a little bit tougher. So that's what I used this last summer. I still have a lot to learn about feet, and I've been doing a lot of research on that. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to change this upcoming summer. So that's just what I did this past summer while hiking the San Luis Loop and backpacking. I don't really need all those items for short like weekend trips or even like week-long trips. I don't think they're really necessary for the majority of dogs. Definitely not for mine. It just happened to be something I ended up using over a long-term hike that was, you know, a month and a half long. So I just thought I would share that. Okay, so last, I want to share about some items that I don't necessarily take on every trip, or aren't really necessarily essential for backpacking. But these are more items that might just depend on where you live, like the climate or where you're hiking, as well as on your specific dog. And the first one is having to do with hiking in very warm places like the desert. So one thing I brought this summer that was new was, or new for backpacking anyways, was these swamp coolers, these Roughwear swamp coolers, which are just like a cooling coat. So I have one for Skittles. I also have one for Prima, Donna, so much bigger. And basically the premise of how they work is you soak them in water, and then when you put them on the dog, as the water evaporates, it causes them to cool down. So the nice thing is you don't have to recharge them in a freezer like a lot of cooling coats or cooling pads. The downside is that, like, most of the time when you're hiking in the desert anyways, you are short on water to begin with. So you're short on water and it's hot. So you kind of like need water to make these work. So it's not always as helpful. But if you're hiking somewhere that's very hot, but you're going to be near water all the time, this might be helpful. Or, you know, I've heard a lot of people just say to make their dogs lay down in the water. My dogs don't really like water that much, so this was kind of helpful. I'm a little undecided on if I will go forward using this or not, but there is like a little loop if you use a harness. You can put like a little light on for in the dark, and they're a little bit reflective. So that was something I used. I used it for like 2/3 of my hike and then left it to pick up for later. But that was something I used. Another thing I really like for hot weather that is not dog specific, but made a huge difference for my dogs and myself in the desert is a lightweight hiking umbrella. So this is the Gossamer Gear backpacking umbrella, ultralight backing umbrella. Six Moons Designs makes one that's a little bit lighter now, I think, but this is honestly, it was like one of my favorite pieces of gear. Like, I just loved it so much. You know, I used it when we had to take breaks in the middle of the day and there wasn't a lot of shade. I would use it to shade my dogs. We'd like all huddle under the shade together. So like when I was road walking with my dogs across the San Luis Valley when it was like 100 degrees, I would like stick it on my wagon for the dogs to have some shade, and then also like during my break stick it on the corner, and then we'd all huddle under the wagon and under the umbrella. It was also really nice during like squalls. So in the San Juans, and it's just called Colorado in general, we get a lot of afternoon thunderstorms that come through, and a lot of times will like come through like rainstorm for like 20 minutes and then blow out, which is really nice. Like, I'm so appreciative of that. But it made it a lot easier and smarter most of the time to just put up the umbrella and just hide with the dogs under a tree, you know, assuming that you're not gonna like be under the only tree and get struck by lightning, but kind of like hide under shelter with the umbrella and just wait out the storm and then keep hiking. Especially with dogs. Like, it's one thing by yourself, but with dogs, so it's kind of nice to be able to do that. So I really, really liked my umbrella. That is one of my favorite pieces of gear and is very handy for hiking with dogs. So another piece of gear that I originally started with for the dogs, but ended up using more for myself mostly, are these like backpacking shams, like towel things from REI. So it's kind of like just a little chamois. It comes with like a little thing you can stow it in, but I don't use that. And I originally bought these to use to dry the dogs off. I have two, and ended up using them more for myself as like a Kleenex rag and like a drool rag for when I'm sleeping. Don't ask. Anyways, but you can use them to like dry them off if you have dogs that get wet a lot or it's raining and you want to keep your gear dry. And they actually work pretty well. They soak up a lot of moisture. So that's something you could consider too. It's pretty light, multifunctional, so that's nice. So I mentioned briefly the wagon. That was part of our backpacking gear. Obviously that's not normal, but I just want to throw it out there as an option of, you know, if you're really in a pickle and you have a long road walk because you're through hiking or something, just pull your dog, right? I guess, I don't know. Or maybe you have like a really old dog and you're doing the Resurrection Pass Trail in Alaska. That's pretty broad and well graded. I have actually seen that as people pulling like dogs and pulks and that kind of thing. So you never know, could be an option. All right, and then the last thing I want to mention is that, like I've said in other videos, my dogs like toys, especially Prima. So, you know, you're out there to have fun, so might as well take something nice for them as well. Or even like extra fun treats, but definitely a toy to throw for them. Prima really loved playing with her toys, especially at the beginning of our trip. It was just kind of nice to have and a fun thing, and you know, we're out there to have fun, so might as well make sure that they have an extra piece of gear as well. So I know this seems like a lot, it definitely adds a lot, and it's important to remember that when you're backpacking with your dogs, they don't have a choice, and while they have a lot of fun out there, usually part of the privilege of hiking and backpacking with dogs is that you're going to have to make sacrifices. So I'm okay carrying all these things for my dogs and increasing my pack weight, because to me it's worth it. But just keep that in mind. And if you have any questions about my gear or suggestions or things that you really like, I would love to know. So question of the day: what was your backpacking gear list for 2020, and what are you planning on changing? I already have a couple things that I've mentioned that I want to change. I want to add nail clippers next year and a whole bunch of other things. So, you know, be sure to stay tuned because there's going to be an update on our 2021 gear list. But until then, I hope you have happy trails, and while we're all daydreaming about summer, it's just around the corner, only a couple months to go. So we'll see you out there, and be sure to stay tuned for my next video, and we'll see you soon.